Alita Battle Angel is directed by Robert Rodriguez and produced by James Cameron, the master himself. And this is a film that James Cameron has tried to get made for at least over a decade, but he ended up not directing it because of his commitment to the Avatar sequel. So he he basically handed it off to Rodriguez. The film is based off of the popular 9-10 volume manga series, whatever it is, called Battle Angel Alita. And this series is set in a post-apocalyptic future and follows Alita, a female cyborg who has no memory of her previous life whatsoever, and she's found in a scrapyard by a doctor, a cybernetics doctor, who ends up rebuilding her. Throughout the film, we see Alita experience the world for the first time, in her own mindset from what she can remember, which is pretty much nothing. And we see how she interacts with and reacts to the world. And, this is all while she's trying to recover her memories. And I'm trying to say this synopsis without any spoilers because I didn't even know what the movie was about going in. I'm not a previous fan of the brand or the source material. I just knew that it was sci-fi and that it was based off of a manga series, and I was like, okay, cool, you had me at sci-fi. Okay, so before I get into this review, I actually want to talk about what happened when we were in the theater, the thing that I mentioned in the last video. But basically, we went to see Alita in the Dolby Cinema at our AMC, which great theater if you've never been to one. It's amazing. It's my favorite theater in there. But anyway, we had just finished watching Isn't It Romantic on the first floor, and the Dolby's on the second, although it feels like the third the way that you actually get up there. But anyway, we get to the entrance of that theater room, and the movie's in 3D. I've never seen this particular theater room offer 3D, so I didn't know how it would go, and you'll see what I mean in a second. But by this point, I already had to rush back down to the first floor because Mallory had left her purse in there. Luckily, I found it. But, I was sprinting down there the entire time. And so anyway, you'll see why that's important a little bit later. But so I couldn't find 3D glasses outside or inside the theater. So I walked over to the IMAX theater, which was next to it. And this is one of those IMAX theaters where it's nothing special. It's just a regular screen, but it just has really loud sound. One of those IMAX theaters, not a true IMAX theater. God, I wish we had one. But anyway, I went to the outside of that one, and I got the 3D glasses from there, and then we walked in there. We waited about maybe like 20, 25 minutes, and then it started, went through the trailers, everything was fine. The very last trailer was the first Aladdin trailer, the one before we saw the shitty genie animation. But anyway, sitting there with the glasses on, and, or not the glasses on. How was I going to start this story? Fuck. Oh, I notice it's blurry, and I basically poke my wife and I say, hey, it's 3D, we gotta put on the glasses. I put them on, no change. I don't understand what's going on, so I'm like, oh, maybe my eyes just aren't adjusted. So I do a double take. Take them off, put them back on, still the same thing. I look up everywhere around us, and this is a Saturday night, so there's a lot of people in there, or at least a fair amount. Not enough for that theater. But anyway, sorry. Just everybody else was wearing different glasses. So I tell my wife something's up. I said, go ahead and give me your glasses. I take them. I take off my jacket and this top, and I'm already sweating because it's so hot in the theater, hotter than normal, and I did have to do the sprinting earlier. So because I realized this was probably the last trailer, I sprinted downstairs, found out that they only gave the glasses to people who scanned in with the Alita specific ticket, and we scanned in with a different movie ticket because we came like 2.5 hours earlier than that previous point. So I had to run downstairs, let them know, and then I had to run back up and wait for somebody to give us glasses. And so by this point, I'm fucking tired. And also, I was hoping that it would be worth the wait and, you know, having to go through that issue of getting glasses, because during that point, and I'm not talking about, hang on, my throat's starting to kill me. Okay, I'm not talking about running, you know, the sprinting back and forth to get the purse. No, just in that second set of sprinting, I tripped 3 times, and one of them, you know, my left shin still hurts because of how it landed on the escalator. And anyway, I tripped because I'm clumsy, you know, just getting that part out of the way. But basically, I was going into this wondering, is the 3D worth it because of that entire situation. Okay, now I'm done with that rendition of whatever the hell that was. Anyway, so first, the disclaimer. For those of the uninitiated, which is what I call the people who haven't seen any of my videos yet or are kind of new to my channel, the way that I get my thoughts out is I do a pro and con list, and it's pretty simple. Pros are good, cons are bad, and sometimes I will combine the sections. You know, if I'm doing a pro and I can easily transition into a con, I will take advantage of that, but mostly I try to keep them separate. Okay, there's your disclaimer. Let's get into the review. I would like to start off by saying that getting the Dolby Cinema specific glasses made all the difference for me. My wife would disagree with me, especially because she mentioned during our car ride home that after a while her eyes adjusted and she didn't notice any difference between having it in 3D with glasses on versus taking them off and just looking at a blurry picture. She didn't see much difference, but I noticed a big difference. Usually you can tell when a film is not made for 3D, and you know, when it was basically a victim of post-conversion. Well, Alita was luckily not a victim of it. It had some of the best looking 3D that I've seen in a movie since the first time that I watched Avatar back when I was living in Georgia. Shit, how old was I when that came out? Wasn't that like 2007? I was like 11 or something? But anyway, it's not surprising, especially because the guy who was originally developing this was the director and producer and writer and pretty much everything on Avatar, so it wasn't a surprise that it looked as good as it did. This was definitely something that if you're offered a 3D showing, you should at least consider going to it. And hey, I'm not a purveyor of 3D. I usually hate 3D. Hell, I even did a video a long time ago, I think back when we were in the old apartment, where I just basically talked about how 3D is a dying art and how, you know, how it has been, sorry, I had a brain fart. Oh, how it has rarely been utilized in the correct fashion. And luckily with this movie, it's one of the few examples of good 3D. Now, the thing that everyone has wondered about since it was announced that this film was actually going into production, you know, after the long decade or so of development hell, everybody was wondering, how would the visuals be? The world looks beautiful and just surprisingly tangible, and the effects are spectacular, especially in the action sequences. They are especially breathtaking in the motorball sequences, which, for those of you who aren't familiar with the manga or its world, the way that I describe motorball is basically, to me it felt like a mix of rollerblading and Formula 1 or NASCAR racing and basketball. Yeah, I would go that far. But anyway, those moments were specific highlights for me. Rosa Salazar plays Alita, and while I thought that she did give a pretty good performance, I did think that she did, the performance capture may have messed a bit with the performance, because of how big her eyes were. It definitely took away from some things. It did make me think Uncanny Valley, which was a little odd. I was surprised that it didn't, but it made it seem a little hard or much harder for her to emote certain things, as well as perhaps show most of her mouth. She would 1 second have a small mouth, and then she would smile, and then it would seem to just cross over most of her face like it was a fucking Cheshire cat smile, and, you know, it wasn't enough to take me out of the film, but it made it a lot harder for me to see the full performance. The film is also ripe with narrative issues. The story would seem to jump from, it would seem to jump from story to story, plot point to plot point, and I think with my very, 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 very limited knowledge, or lack thereof, of this brand, I theorized that maybe they took the first couple of volumes from the manga and just kind of crammed them into about a 2.5 hour, give or take, runtime, and just went with that. And because of that, it felt difficult to connect with Alita and her plights and adventures, or even other characters, because seemingly things would start and then stop, or, it would start and then be let go, and then we would be reminded of it a little bit later down the line. The film also has a romantic subplot between Alita and a boy that kind of works with the doctor who rebuilt her. It was so very cliched that there didn't seem to be a legitimate emotional connection between the two, outside of the fact that Alita was both interested and a bit aroused by a cute boy. And because she is basically a new person, it comes across as though, she would have fallen for any cute guy that just so happened to stand right in front of her. Christoph Waltz plays Dr. Ido, the doctor that I mentioned earlier. He gives an average performance, which I was kind of sad about, especially because this is a two-time winning Oscar contender. I think he won an Oscar twice, and I'm pretty sure both of them were for Tarantino films. I did think that his character was interesting at first. He was set up in two different ways to be a very interesting character, one involving a traumatic event in his past, and then the other one that kind of occurs because of that traumatic experience. It's kind of a choice that he makes, and when the latter came up, I became really interested. It was kind of like a plot twist for me, and it was a twist that I didn't see coming, and I figured, hey, this will open up to more interesting things with this character. But, it ended up being barely touched through on the rest of the film, including the other thing. And his character wasn't the only supporting character that wasn't given enough attention. We also had Jennifer Connelly's character, which I will not say who she is because that's a spoiler. And then Mahershala Ali's character, whose name is Vector. Hang on. Yeah, his name was Vector. Okay, anyway, Ali's character, Vector, came across as a pretty cool villain. I liked how he played off of him and how kind of subdued his performance was. And then Connolly's character was showcased in a way, both of them were, in ways that, they seemed like they would be really important characters down the line, and that you could set them up for future films. But the way that they set up their characters in this film, they're set up in a way to where they could never be utilized more than what they are right now, if not less, and that just, again, basically it makes them feel like their characters are underutilized, and even pointless to a point, especially with Ali, who wasn't even the true villain. The true villain is a character who can seemingly project his consciousness into other people, to the point where he's able to communicate with people through them and maybe even control them to a certain extent. We never got to see what that extent was. We only saw him communicate with other people. And, when you basically have a behind-the-scenes villain, you have to do it in a certain way where it doesn't, make the battle between good and evil feel one-dimensional. Because the big bad guy's way over here, now we just got a bunch of random assholes fighting us. Watching Alita battle Angel, I thought back to the original Star Wars trilogy. We all knew that there was an Emperor because they mentioned him from time to time in the first two movies. And then we finally saw him in Return of the Jedi, so his presence was there. It's not like we didn't know about him until Return of the Jedi. However, the focus was solely on Darth Vader as the villain, That was the main and primary threat. This film needed to focus more on the villains that were right in front of us instead of what was going to be down the line if, if Cameron and Rodriguez were able to turn this into a series. But because of how tracking is over the next few weeks, it's looking like they will not even get close to breaking even on this movie. So, just it's not really going to go anywhere. However, a presence from the overall villain wouldn't have been a bad thing if they had just done it once or twice, but they did it way too consistently. After watching this film, I felt the same way that I did after I saw Bohemian Rhapsody, where there are a couple aspects of the film that make me want to rewatch it, even buy it outright when it comes out on DVD and Blu-ray. But I still might hesitate because, again, it was a couple of aspects that I liked compared to the other aspects which far outweigh the good. The bad outweighed the good by a long shot. And, now I'm not a fan of the manga. I have no prior experience to the brand, as I mentioned. Excuse me. If you're more of a fan of anime or just the manga itself, I feel like you may get more enjoyment out of it. And hey, if you're just going to this movie solely so that you can get a good action film with amazing visuals, you'll get that. That'll be exactly what you got. It's just excuse me. As for me, I was disappointed because of what the film could have been, and I personally think it would have been slightly different if Cameron had directed it. The film had the visual and technical mastery of James Cameron, but the narrative and character downfalls of Robert Rodriguez. And with all that being said, that's everything for my review. I'm sorry that I was struggling for a little bit to talk to you guys, and that I started rambling about the theater thing, but I just, I thought it was an interesting anecdote. Please send me multiple likes for that story so that I feel better. Or that, I don't know why I said that. Anyway, thank you guys once again for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please do not hesitate to hit that like button. I almost ran out of breath. And if you haven't already, please don't hesitate to hit that subscribe button in order to keep up with everything that's going on in the channel. Thank you guys once again. Farewell until the next video, and you guys have a good day.